So glad that all of you can join us in person today, and all those of you who are online to our Reform Night. Before we begin, we're going to go over just a few announcements that we have. So we have just wanted to go over our upcoming nights that we have coming up. So October 27th, we're going to do our Connect Night, which is a Jewish perspective on the pillars of faith. November 3rd is our support night, which is we're going to be watching a screening of Mama Bears, and this is a documentary about conservative Christian mothers who became fierce advocates for the LGBTQIA plus community and their children, and we'd love for you to join us. So please, there's a online, there's a way you can register that you would like to come. And then on November 10th, we're going to do Explore, and that is what comes next, the afterlife. And then November 17th, we're back to Reform, and it will be the real story of Thanksgiving. So before we get into our presentation tonight, we'd like to have Jason come up and pray.
Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to be together as a new way and have an opportunity to meet new people and see a different perspective that we might have thought of. This is a community of faith where we are welcome to all different viewpoints, and we are excited to have new folks here and to talk through this particular topic. Although it's, of course, not the most pleasant topic in the world, it's good to know what we can do about it. Thank you, Lord, for always watching over us and guiding us, and help us to continue to see the world through your eyes and ears and your heart. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Back to Jen.
So I would also like to add that tonight's topic comes with a trigger warning. As most of you know, we do not shy away from the real important topics here at A New Way, but we know we all need to know about this topic, and it's domestic violence. So we are honored tonight to have Mary Jo Claffy here tonight to share her story of her son, Mitchell. Mary Jo and I met a few weeks ago, and I was humbled by her bravery and strength. When we become parents, especially mothers, our hearts leave our chest and walk around with our children. And amid grief, when part of our heart dies, you have to figure out a way to go on. And sometimes you even have to figure out a way to breathe. Mary Jo told me that she does not think of herself as strong. To her, there was no choice but to share Mitchell's story, to bring awareness even to just one person to the realization that they are a victim of a toxic relationship and have the courage to leave. Mary Jo?
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Mary Jo, and my son Mitchell was a victim of domestic violence. One usually thinks domestic violence is physical between a man and a woman, which is not always the case. Domestic violence is between two people, no matter the age, race, or gender. Domestic violence is any type of abuse: physical, emotional, and psychological. I would like to share with you Mitchell's story. Mitchell was a proud gay man with a great sense of humor and a heart of gold. During Mitchell's adolescent and early teen years, he struggled with his sexuality, resulting in low self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-worth. Later, I would find out that Mitchell had tried to commit suicide 3 times. I asked, "Why didn't you come to me? Ask for help." He explained he didn't know what was wrong. How could he ask for help if he couldn't explain or understand it himself? Frequently, Mitch and I would have heart-to-heart conversations, and we'd talk about everything with ourselves or political or religious events. It was wonderful. I learned so much about him. When Mitch was about 19, we were having one of our heart-to-hearts. He told me he was bisexual. Now, keep in mind, I knew that Mitch was gay for many years at this point. I said, are you sure, Mitch? He's like, "Yeah, I am, Mom." And I paused and I said, "Mitch, can I ask you a few questions?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." Like, "Have you had sex with the girl?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Did you like it?" "No." "Have you had sex with a guy?" "Yeah." Like, "Did you like it?" "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." There was a bit of a pause. I'm like, Mitchell, do you like Brussels sprouts? He's like, no. I'm like, do you eat Brussels sprouts? He's like, no. I'm like, okay. So he just kind of went, Well, about a year later, he came out. I could see he had found himself. He looked so different, so confident, sure of himself. He was happy. Now, Mitchell had a few relationships that usually involved distrust, infidelity, and manipulation, where both parties would be to blame. I mean, I could never understand how Mitch thought it was okay in a relationship. That was okay in a relationship. I mean, his dad and I have been married for close to 40 years and never demonstrated that type of behavior. Later, I realized the feelings of insecurity and doubt Mitchell had during his adolescent years would often rear their ugly head, causing him to frequently battle between them and the self-confident man he had become. In March of 2017, Mitchell started seeing Mark. He seemed happy, stopping by more often to visit. It was really great. And Mark seemed nice, treating Mitch good. In September of 2017, Mitch went on vacation with us. And a few days into the trip was the first time we started to see signs that this may not necessarily be the best relationship. Well, Mitch tried calling Mark, and there was no answer. So Mitch called Mark's sister, who lived nearby, to see if she could check on him. Well, you see, Mark was addicted to meth, binged, and passed out. Mark claimed he missed Mitch so much that he had to use. Mitch wanted to fly back home. We're like, no. Mitch, think about it. You've only been dating for 6 months. You've gone 2 days, and he had a relapse. It's not your fault. The man is 40 years old. I mean, you see, Mitch was a twink, and his gentlemen of choice were bears. For the next few years, it seemed that the relationship was going well. You could tell Mitch was happy, and we enjoyed our family time together. Then in September of 2020, Mark's nephew had committed suicide, and they were very close. That's when Mark and Mitch started using drugs on a regular basis. Mark meth, Mitch coke. They argued all the time, breaking up, getting back together, vicious cycle going back and forth. And Mark was paranoid, accusing Mitchell of stealing, and would change his passwords on a weekly basis because people were hacking into his accounts. I mean, like some real serious paranoia. And then Mark would have hookups and tell Mitch, well, he needs a change, but if he really loved him, he'd understand. Now, keep in mind, this is only one-sided. There was no way Mitch could do that. And, Mitchell went along with it. Well, this is when Mark's demons started to reveal themselves. 6 months later, in May of 21, Mitch and Mark asked us to come over. Mark did most of the talking, and Mitch had gotten mixed up with the wrong kind of people. They sent Mark a recording of Mitch performing a sexual act, and Mark got caught watching it at work and was in the process of being terminated. So they decided that they were going to go move to Vegas. Well, Mark used to live there many years ago, and so he was familiar with the area, and, they needed to leave by the end of the week. I mean, and at this point, Mark's family didn't have much to do with him. I mean, you see, Mark's been a meth addict for decades. I mean, keep in mind, the man is in his 40s. And so his family was done with all the dramatics of his addiction. Well, my husband and I packed them up and drove them and the 2 cats to Las Vegas. Mitch and Mark had 2 cats, Mira and Jessie. Mitchell loved those kitties like they were his own children. Mark knew this and would regularly pull those heartstrings to keep control over Mitchell. A week later in Vegas, Mitch called crying hysterically because he had had a panic attack, and the ambulance took him to the hospital. Well, Mark was supposed to meet him there. Well, 5 hours later, Mark was nowhere to be found and wasn't answering his phone. So Mitchell started walking back to the apartment. Even this is like 2 o'clock in the morning in a bad part of Vegas. Well, about an hour later, Mitchell got to the apartment, and Mark said his phone died. He thought it was charging. Well, and any time that they would argue, or if Mitch didn't answer Mark's calls, Mark would block him or just not answer him. And of course, in Mark's usual fashion, he manipulated the situation and persuaded Mitch to stay in the relationship. Within 3 weeks of that initial move to Vegas, Mitchell traveled between home and Vegas twice. The last time he came home, Mitch said it was over. A month or so later in July, Mitch was living with us, and Mark was still in Vegas. Although Mitch was adamant that he and Mark were over as a couple, they were just talking as friends. Well, this meth addict friend would call Mitchell up in the middle of the night, accusing him of stealing his wallet, using his credit cards, and oh, the cats got into his stash and were acting funny. So Mitch would just send him money because he didn't have money to take the cats to the vet. Now, according to Mitch, Mark was having a string of bad luck. I mean, you see, Mark was in a fender bender, couldn't afford the car repairs, food for the cats, he lost his job. Oh, and he was going to be evicted by the end of the week. We were like, hello, Mitch. He's a drug addict in Vegas. Mitch told us we needed to help him. We're like, hell no. Well, a few hours later, Mitch admitted that he and Mark were still a couple. Gave us an ultimatum. Either we move Mark and the cats back to our house, or he'll go to Vegas and be homeless with Mark and the cats. Well, after many hours of discussion, including Mark, we decided that we would move Mark back to our house with an agreement that they needed to abide by or they would both be kicked out, and the cats. I mean, understand, we couldn't allow Mitchell to be homeless, let alone in another state, and we were afraid that he was going to call our bluff. That wasn't a chance we were willing to take. And the agreement included everything from them finding jobs, paying room and board, both staying clean, seeking help for their addictions, and then lastly, Mark was never allowed to be in our house alone. Well, the next day, after my husband and Mitch left to go get Mark, I started to prepare. I went to the hardware store, bought doorknob lock for my bedroom door, front entryway door locks. I've got some really pretty jewelry. I didn't want that to be pawned off for drug money. And what if they got kicked out in the middle of the night? I didn't want to have to worry about there not being a hardware store open to replace those locks, so I just kept them in the closet just in case. About 6 weeks later in September, Mark's mom had become ill and passed away, which was around the 1-year anniversary of his nephew's death. So Mitch and Mark decided that they were going to move to Tennessee to live with Mark's other sister. They were going to get a fresh start. Well, the morning they were to leave, Mark went on a binge, destroyed Mitchell's medications and everything that he had purchased, and blacked out, and then, of course, claiming he didn't do it. Mitch immediately moved back home with us and agreed that Mark could take the cats to Tennessee. And again, the relationship was over, and they were going to co-parent the cats. Mitch would say, "I'm so sorry, Mom. You were right." I'm like, "Mitch, it's not about me being right. It's about you realizing that you deserve to be treated better." He's like, "I know. I just don't want to be alone." In November, Mitch started talking with Mark more and more, yet the turmoil Mark put Mitchell through continued. One time Mark had called Mitchell stating that his cat Mira was dead and he couldn't find Jessie. Mark didn't know what to do with her, so he put her in a garbage bag and threw her in a dumpster. And the guy that he hooked up with was trying to help him find her. Well, Mitchell was so distraught he couldn't even walk. Mark let Mitchell believe this for 6 hours. 6 hours. The cats were fine. Mitch found this out by calling Mark's sister that he was living with and asked if she knew anything that was going on. She was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Mark's not even home. And I just came up from downstairs playing with the cats and feeding them." Well, Mark manipulated the situation, persuaded Mitch to stay in the relationship. A few days went by and all was forgotten, and they made up. Well, we had enough of all this drama. We were beside ourselves with how Mitchell accepted such abuse. So we gave him an ultimatum. It was either us, his family, or Mark. He couldn't have both. Mitchell chose Mark. We knew he would. Our hearts were broken. November 20th of 21, Mitchell left for Tennessee. That was the last time I hugged my son. We texted over the holidays and spoke twice before he was murdered on April 6th of 2022. Mitchell was 31 years old. According to the police report, Mitch and Mark had been fighting for days. Mark was breaking things in the apartment. Mitch told him it was over and he was leaving. Mark stated he couldn't let him leave and stabbed him multiple times. When the police arrived, they had found Mitchell already deceased by the front door. On February 13th of this year, Mark pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and is currently serving a 20-year sentence with no eligibility of parole. I was able to give a victim impact statement in court when Mark was sentenced. While holding an 8x10 picture of Mitchell, I faced his murderer and gave the following statement. Mitchell was such an amazing, handsome young man, so full of life and a huge heart. Mitchell was only 31 years old, and you had no right to end his life. Mitchell is so deeply missed by so many friends and family. Mitchell was so funny. Mitchell had such a contagious laugh. Mitchell was so loving and caring. Mitchell had such a passion for Star Wars, Harry Potter, and rescuing animals. Mitchell was smart, knowledgeable. Mitchell was so personable. Everyone that met him loved him. Jesse and Mira loved him so much, and he loved those kitties like his own children. No one will get the chance to meet Mitchell in person, but he will live on and be known not by his death, but how he lived. Mitchell's short but beautiful life will be remembered and shared by family and friends who truly love him, and you can never take that away. You are a narcissistic monster. You will never see Mitchell again. Mitchell is in heaven, and you will burn with the devil. You may have taken Mitchell from us physically, but you will never take away all the wonderful memories we have of him, and all of our best memories of him are without you. The only memories I want you to have of Mitchell are the ones from the morning of April 6th. I proceeded to go into some specific details, physical details of Mitchell's last moments in life that only Mark would have witnessed. They're too graphic for me to repeat here. Then I concluded with, this is what I want you to remember for the rest of your life. When the DA's office told me about giving a victim impact statement, I initially thought about everything Mitchell gave up for Mark. His family, his friends, his own self-worth. And I thought, wait a minute. This SOB is a narcissist. He'll triumph in that. I'm like, oh, hell no. He has taken enough from me. I am not giving him anything more. And if I go into how empty I feel because he took my son away from me, again, no, he doesn't give a shit about me. That's when I decided to share all the amazing things about Mitchell and repeated his name over and over. Now, looking back on the relationship, there were so many signs. Controlling. Mark had cameras in the apartments to watch the cats. Mark didn't allow Mitchell to be happy unless it involved him or was about him. I mean, Mitchell was standing up in his brother's wedding. The day before the wedding was the rehearsal. Mitch called crying, very upset, and said he wasn't able to go to the rehearsal or to the wedding. He and Mark had been arguing, and everything's all messed up, and he can't go because he needs to fix this with Mark. Fortunately, we were able to settle Mitch down enough to come over. We talked, and he was able to enjoy himself at his brother's wedding. Of course, I was furious. I'd gotten Mark alone. I reamed him a new one. I was tired of him pulling this shit every time Mitch was happy. And Mitch was so happy for his brother. And I was not going to tolerate him ruining this for him. No, besides a few other choice words. Then there's the isolation. Mitchell had quite a few jobs in their 5-year relationship. I mean, you see, when you start a new job, you make friends. Yeah, well, that's when Mark would start his crap, and they would argue for hours before Mitchell would go into work. So due to attendance or poor performance, Mitchell would lose his job. And the friends that Mitch had before this relationship, he no longer spoke to. The only friends they had were the ones that Mark knew. And then we gradually started seeing and talking with Mitch less and less. Well, unless, of course, they needed something. And I'm sure the wedding incident didn't help. Mitchell is the oldest of my 2 children. And throughout 2021, Mitchell had become more and more estranged with his brother. The last time they had spoken was in June of 21. The last 6 weeks, Mitch lived with us. Anytime Mark's name was brought up, we'd argue, call each other names. After Mitchell died, that was one of the battles I had to come to terms with. And during that process, I came to understand that that person that I was arguing with was not my son. My son would not talk to me and treat me that way. I was actually arguing with Mark. And prior to this, we weren't aware of Mitchell experiencing any physical abuse from Mark before that dreadful morning. Mark is a narcissist and stripped everything from Mitchell over those 5 years that they were together. I mean, this narcissist broke Mitchell down, belittled him, took away his identity, threw Mitchell's faults in his face, made Mitch feel that Mark's behavior was his fault, criticized him, made him feel insecure, convinced Mitch to think that he was worthless, unworthy of love, and molded Mitch to believe that he couldn't survive without him. Well, and then turn around and boost his confidence, tell Mitchell no one will love him as much as he does, and the typical, it won't happen again. In truth, the confident young man that had just found himself years before was deliberately brainwashed and stolen from us right in front of our eyes. Mitchell battling with himself over our love versus Mark's love and knew he couldn't have both. My heart breaks thinking about how painful and difficult that must have been for Mitch, to need and want both but could only choose one. While grieving and trying to process the trauma of Mitchell's death, I heard a poem that really made me think. The poem is called I Am Your Disease. Many times when one thinks of a disease in a 12-step program, it's thought as drugs or alcohol. Well, when I heard it, I knew that Mark was Mitchell's disease. As I read this, keep in mind that any repetitive, destructive behavior, whether it be brought upon yourself or by someone else, is considered a disease. Now, I've modified the poem a bit because the original is quite lengthy. I am your disease. You know who I am. You've called me your friend. Wishes of misery and heartache I send. I want only to see that you're brought to your knees. I'm the devil inside you. I'm your disease. I'll invade all your thoughts. I'll take hostage your soul. I'll become your new master in total control. I'll maim your emotions, I'll run the whole game, till your entire existence is crippled with shame. When you call me, I come, sometimes in disguise. Quite often, I'll take you by total surprise. But take you I will, and just as you feared, I'll only want to hurt you with no mercy spared. If you have your own family, I'll see it destroyed. I'll steal every pleasure in life you've enjoyed. I'll not only hurt you, I'll kill if I please. I'm your worst living nightmare. I'm your disease. I bring self destruction, but still you can't tell. I'll sweep you through heaven, then drop you in hell. I'll chase you forever, wherever you go. And then when I catch you, you won't even know. I'll sometimes lay silent, just waiting to strike. What yours becomes mine, 'cause I take what I like. I'll take all you own, and I won't care who sees. I'm your constant companion. I'm your disease. If you have any honor, I'll strip it away. You'll lose all your hope and forget how to pray. I'll leave you in darkness while blindly you stare. I'll reduce you to nothing and won't even care. So don't take me for granted. My powers are sublime. I'll bend and I'll break you time after time. I'll crumble your world with the greatest of ease. I'm that madman inside you. I am your disease. You just can't dismiss all the good times we've shared. When you were alone, wasn't I who appeared? When you sold those possessions you knew you would need, wasn't I the first one who stepped in and agreed? For I know it will happen, I've seen it before. Those who love misery will crawl back for more. So take comfort in knowing I'm waiting right here, but next time around, you'd better just beware. You think you're stronger or smarter this time? There isn't a mountain or hill you can't climb? Well, if that's what you're thinking, you ain't learned a thing, 'cause I'll knock you silly if you step back in my ring. But you say you've surrendered, so what can I do? It's so sad, in a way. I had big plans for you. Creating your nightmare for me was a dream. I'm sure gonna miss you. We made quite a team. So please don't forget me. I won't forget you. I'll stand by your side watching all that you do. I'm ready and waiting, so call if you please. I won't let you forget me. I am your disease. Can you or someone you know relate to Mitchell's story or the poem? If you do, please find the strength and courage Mitchell didn't have and leave that toxic relationship. The victim needs to come to terms with the abuse before the cycle can be broken. I hope hearing Mitchell's story today will bring an awareness to always remember no one should be controlled by another. You have control over your own life. You have a choice. You may feel alone and no one understands. But there are resources out there to help you. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, they're available 24/7. That means round the clock, any day, any time, all year round. Their number is 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233. Sometimes those that are outside of the box, like your family and friends, actually see the relationship clearer. Be open-minded. Listen. You are the victim. You are not the cause of the abuse. You are strong. You are amazing. And you deserve to be truly happy. And you are worthy of genuine love. I appreciate a new way of giving me an opportunity to share Mitchell's story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jo.
Thank you.
Well, this concludes our online story or our online message. And please be sure to check out our upcoming events.